Elizabeth Whitney Williams was married to a lighthouse keeper on Beaver Island, and her husband passed away in the waters when he was trying to do a rescue. She not only lost him on that rescue, she lost many other close relatives over the years, and she decided it was her calling to take up the mantle of that lighthouse. And so she did. And as a single woman for multiple years, she kept the light that her husband had kept to help others stay alive on the waters. Well, to me, Elizabeth Whitney Williams was my great, great, great aunt. And so growing up, I heard her story of Aunt Libby, who was a lighthouse keeper on the Great Lakes. Growing up, I didn't know that anyone else knew her story. We knew her story. We told it around the table, and I had her book in my childhood library. I didn't know that anybody else cared, so I appreciate today hearing that other people care and getting to tell more of her story. I was a pastor in Harbor Springs, and so I laugh and say that I know a lot about being a woman in a man's job in Harbor Springs, just like my great 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 aunt was. I walked 2 stores down from the church where I had been appointed, and I went into the Harbor Springs Historical Society. And I turned and I looked and said, Aunt Libby? There was a huge picture of her and her husband on the wall, and it was the moment that I understood that this story was bigger than just my family. She took initiative and took a job that needed to be filled. She learned that job standing alongside of her husband, even though it wasn't hers to take in the first place, and she was able to persevere through grief. Remember, she's keeping this light through a 3-day storm while she's watching out the window for her husband to come home. That's some strength of character. Elizabeth Whitney Williams was ahead of her time. See, when she wrote her memoir, A Child of the Sea and Life Among Mormons, this was a time in the early 1900s when many women were still illiterate, and she's deciding that her story is worth writing and publishing and released in her town. This is ahead of her time. She also received payment at a government level that was equivalent to every man and used that money to purchase her own house as a married woman in her own name only. That's very progressive for women. She was really running the lighthouse, and she was not only making it a place of her business, but a place of her community, where they brought in other people to come and sing and play and be part of the activities at the lighthouse. So it wasn't all business, it had become community for her as well. I believe that Elizabeth Whitney Williams took everything that life threw at her, grabbed it, and ran with it. And I think that it is amazing how she marched forward on her own path a solid 100 years before many women were doing the same.